1, 2, 3. Lu Chuang hid in the corner, silently counting the passing shield agents. He roughly counted. There were at least 30 shield agents in the factory, enough for him to complete the task. Just do it. Lu Chuang stared at one of the shield agents who was alone, tightly gripped the wooden stick in his hand, and quietly followed behind. As if sensing something strange behind him, just as shield agent was about to turn around, Lu Chuang swung a wooden stick and smashed it down. Clang. With a muffled sound, the shield agent fell to the ground. Unlock condition. Surprise 30 shield agents without being discovered, 2/30. Well, very smooth. Lu Chuang ignored the unconscious shield agent and continued looking for the next victim with a wooden stick. The assailant was wearing a black coat and a black mask. Once he found the whereabouts of the target, he immediately called for support. Before the support arrived, try not to have a frontal conflict with the other party. Phil Coulson arranged the tasks in an orderly manner. Phil Coulson knew that Lu Chuang's strength was definitely not simple. After all, he was someone who could defeat Black Widow, so his strength would not be much worse. Combined with the intelligence information collected before, he believed that Lu Chuang was a very dangerous person. However, since Lu Chuang only stunned their shield agents twice, instead of killing them directly, Phil Coulson left some room for this matter and ordered the shield agents to reduce the possibility of conflicts. They planned to bring Lu Chuang back to the bureau for interrogation. Under the stimulation of special drugs, Natasha Romanoff has come to life. She put on her equipment again, rubbed the back of her aching head and said, "We should let Barton come over. He is more suitable for this appointment. Barton agent is on other missions." Phil Coulson glanced at the tragic death of Joseph Harrow, and said, "The target died, and our clues were disconnected. It seems that we have to find new clues from Mr. Negative." Natasha Romanoff said indifferently, "The next thing is your job. The director has already arranged a new task for me." Phil Coulson nodded, and didn't ask any more questions. He knew that each agent's task was completely confidential. At this time, a shield agent suddenly reported, "Sir, we found that several agents have suffered from unknown attacks." Upon hearing this, Phil Coulson and Natasha Romanoff immediately went to the crime scene to check, and then saw several attacked shield agents lying on the ground. After inspection, the back of the head was attacked with a blunt instrument, and he fell into a coma. At present, his life is not in danger, shield agent said. It was the attacker. Natasha Romanoff said at the time that she was familiar with this scene. Suddenly, all the lights in the factory were turned off, and everyone was plunged into darkness. The people present were all well-trained agents, and there was no sudden change to panic. Phil Coulson calmly ordered to the communicator, "Everyone should wear night vision goggles, and organize a team to go to the electric room to check the main switch." The others divided into groups of 3 and continued to search for the attacker's location. Upon receiving the order, the shield agents acted immediately. Natasha Romanoff suddenly heard a slight sound. Out of an instinctive reaction, Natasha Romanoff immediately grabbed Phil Coulson next to him and rushed towards him, but instead of hearing the expected explosion, he saw a cloud of white mist rising rapidly, covering 5 shield agents in no time. Smoke bomb. Even though they were wearing night vision goggles, their vision was still obstructed by the smoke. Before they could take any action, they heard a noisy fight in the smoke. Clang. 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 With the dull sound, the 3 shield agents lost contact. The remaining 2 shield agents are still in contact. "Sir, someone is attacking us, and the exact location of the enemy has not been found." Clang. Another muffled sound came. He directly interrupted the words of the shield agent. Phil Coulson felt a little bad, and immediately said, "Get out of the smoke range." Receive. The shield agent decisively ran towards the periphery of the smoke. However, just as he was about to leave the smoke, a hand suddenly grabbed his collar and dragged him into the smoke again in front of Phil Coulson and Natasha Romanoff. "Sir, I saw the enemy, it's just..." "No, you didn't see that." "Woo." Clang. Phil Coulson, Natasha Romanoff. Phil Coulson gestured to the other shield agents, and all of them walked towards the smoke area at the same time. As they approached, they soon saw 5 unconscious shield agents, one of whom was still bound with tape, even his eyes and mouth were sealed. A SHIELD agent examined their injuries. Still injured on the back of the head, unconscious. Phil Coulson was shocked at the time. What kind of operation is this, tied up like this to hit the back of the head? Blah blah. In the smoke, 2 smoke bombs suddenly fell to their feet. As the large swath of smoke rose, the surrounding smoke became denser, and it became a vast expanse of white, as if being in a white world, and it was almost impossible to see the people around. Clang. Before they could take any action, they heard the ghostly muffled sound again. Obviously, someone was surrounded by the enemy again. Everyone became vigilant in an instant, but the voice did not stop because of this. As time passed, SHIELD agents continued to lose contact, but they never found the enemy. That guy can see where we are. Natasha Romanoff's voice came over the comm. Leave here. Hearing this, Phil Coulson immediately chose to retreat. If it continues like this, the situation will only become more and more unfavorable to them. The agents of SHIELD acted decisively and rushed out of the smoke area without hesitation. However, when they rushed a certain distance, they found a few smoke bombs rolling in front of them. A large cloud of smoke quickly rose in front of them. How many smoke bombs does this guy have? Just then, they saw a figure emerge from the smoke. The smoke and darkness seemed unable to obstruct his vision. Like a hungry tiger pouncing on its food, it precisely pounced on the nearest SHIELD agent, and grabbed the opponent's leg. Feeling this power beyond ordinary people, the SHIELD agent had no time to resist, and the whole person lost his balance and lay on the ground in an instant. Young man, come and play. Accompanied by weird laughter, this SHIELD agent was directly dragged into the smoke forcibly by this figure. Woo. Don't resist, I'm very light. Clang. Listening to the voice from the communicator, everyone present was stunned. The scene in front of them is completely different from what they imagined. I don't know if it's Phil Coulson's illusion. Why does Phil Coulson feel that Lu Chuang is more excited than anyone else? Now Lu Chuang didn't look like he was being captured by them, it was more like he was capturing them. However, what Phil Coulson can confirm is that Lu Chuang will not kill them, at most he just knocks them out. They also didn't want to push Lu Chuang into a hurry. If Lu Chuang is forced to start killing, I'm afraid their losses will be very heavy. Lu Chuang didn't care what Phil Coulson thought. He who was hidden in the smoke had no intention of stopping at all. Using the ability to observe the soul, he can easily identify the location of everyone, and use a wooden stick to continuously attack the SHIELD agent standing on the edge. As for those who are more difficult to sneak attack, Lu Chuang directly threw him to the ground, then grabbed his legs and dragged him to the corner, tied his whole body with tape and sealed his eyes, forced himself out of the opponent's field of vision, and finally waited for time just knock it out. Compared with the hands and ninjas that Lu Chuang met before, these SHIELD agents were still a little weaker in combat strength. In Lu Chuang's hands, they basically had no ability to resist, and they were knocked unconscious by Lu Chuang one by one. Looking at the progress bar that rose little by little, Lu Chuang enjoyed it completely, and his technique became more and more proficient, no matter who was in front of him. Anyway, he just knocked whoever caught him. 867. However, for Phil Coulson and others, it is very difficult. The smoke almost blocked all their sights, and they couldn't even see the people around them clearly, let alone organize effective countermeasures. Moreover, Lu Chuang's movements were so fast that even if someone counterattacked in time, Lu Chuang can easily avoid it by relying on his terrifying reaction ability. Originally, they wanted to wait for the smoke to dissipate by themselves, but they found that the surrounding smoke not only did not dissipate, but became thicker and thicker. Then, they saw several smoke bombs rolling on the ground, releasing smoke continuously. SHIELD agents. Naturally, Lu Chuang didn't have so many smoke bombs. These smoke bombs were all stolen from other SHIELD agents. With the supplement of ammunition, his actions can be said to be more unscrupulous. Young man, come and play. Woo, clang. Although Phil Coulson couldn't see the surrounding situation clearly, he could clearly feel that the number of SHIELD agents around him was decreasing crazily. He felt a little anxious, and immediately said, "Everyone gather and evacuate." Seeing that the scattered SHIELD agents began to gather together, Lu Chuang was not happy at that time, so how could he defeat them one by one? Lu Chuang rushed to Phil Coulson's position, suddenly raised his head and shouted, Don't even try to leave the dirt. Hearing the commotion here, Phil Coulson immediately looked at Lu Chuang, feeling overjoyed. Lu Chuang's initiative to run out was exactly what he wanted to see. However, Phil Coulson suddenly covered his eyes in pain. A strong light suddenly burst from Lu Chuang's head, instantly blinding Phil Coulson's eyes. Even their night vision goggles couldn't resist the light. Is this guy's head a light bulb? How can it still emit light? At this moment, he suddenly felt his legs being grabbed. A familiar voice came from my ear. Young man, come and play. Phil Coulson. After finding a corner and knocking out Phil Coulson, Lu Chuang's next move was much easier. Without continuing to throw smoke bombs, Lu Chuang walked towards the shield agents like this. The shield agents felt that the surrounding smoke began to subside, and they were secretly happy that there was no obstruction from the smoke, so they had the ability to fight back. Suddenly, they saw a figure walking towards them. Before they could take any action, a bright light instantly illuminated the entire dim environment. Ah! My eyes! My eyes! I can't see. Under the illumination of the holy light special effect, shield agents couldn't open their eyes at all, let alone see Lu Chuang. Lu Chuang walked straight in front of them, lifted the wooden stick and knocked it on the head of a shield agent. Unlock condition. Surprise 30 shield agents without being discovered, 23/30. It turns out that this is also a sneak attack. Lu Chuang murmured. He seemed to have found the right way to play. 2 minutes later, Lu Chuang put away almost consumed mana, and the holy light in his head disappeared instantly. Looking at the unconscious shield agents, he nodded in satisfaction. Master of Disguise. Completed. Unlock condition. Surprise 30 shield agents without being discovered, 30/30. Title obtained. Super High School Level Spy. Whether to unlock the title. After knocking out the last shield agent, Lu Chuang received a prompt from the game system. Lu Chuang threw away the broken wooden stick in his hand and directly unlocked the new title. Unlock successfully. Title: Super High School Level Spy. Explanation. As a qualified spy, the most important thing is to learn to hide your identity. Feature: Masquerade. Disguise. Lu Chuang frowned. He is no stranger to this skill. He can see this skill in many movies. However, instead of testing on the spot, Lu Chuang turned around and left the spot. After Lu Chuang left, a figure suddenly came out from behind the shelf, and followed Lu Chuang soundlessly. However, when she turned the corner with Lu Chuang, she found that Lu Chuang in front of her had disappeared. At the same time, a voice came from behind her. Is it your turn to get lost now? Natasha Romanoff's pupils shrank suddenly, and she suddenly turned to look behind, only to see Lu Chuang standing behind her at some point. When Natasha Romanoff was shocked. You must know her current judgment on Lu Chuang. Except for firearms training, the other party should have no other professional skills training. She never thought that the other party has such an anti-reconnaissance ability. Natasha Romanoff smiled sarcastically. Yes, I got lost, and you also know that this place is too big, it's normal to get lost. Without warning, Natasha Romanoff kicked Lu Chuang with a family planning kick. Lu Chuang seemed to have anticipated her attack a long time ago, and quickly retreated to avoid her attack. He grabbed Natasha Romanoff's long leg and pulled it back. Natasha Romanoff directly split Lu Chuang on the spot. However, Natasha Romanoff's flexibility was strong enough. She put her hands on the ground, reclosed her legs and got up quickly, then bent over and threw herself at Lu Chuang's arms. She knows that Lu Chuang's physique is stronger than ordinary people, so she must subdue Lu Chuang as soon as possible. The moment she was about to touch Lu Chuang raised his leg suddenly, and kicked Natasha Romanoff's waist with a standard sidekick. Seeing this, Natasha Romanoff could only retract his arms to block. Boom. Her calf slammed into Natasha Romanoff's arms hard, and she let out a muffled grunt, only to feel her arms start to go numb. However, Lu Chuang's offensive did not end there. The moment he retracted his legs, his waist suddenly twisted and exerted force, and he slammed into Natasha Romanoff's face in a Russian-style big search posture. Hearing the whistling sound in his ears, Natasha Romanoff didn't dare to take it hard at all, and barely avoided Lu Chuang's attack by turning sideways. Soon. At this moment, Natasha Romanoff suddenly felt a huge amount of pressure rushing towards her face, and was shocked at the same time. Before that, Lu Chuang's melee fighting skills were terrible. However, now Lu Chuang's melee fighting skills are simply obvious proficiency. Natasha Romanoff couldn't understand the reason at all, why someone could change so much in a short period of time, and a student who was partial to majors turned into an all-round student. What Natasha Romanoff doesn't know is that Lu Chuang, who now has a super high school level spy, not only has anti-reconnaissance ability, but also he can use basic melee fighting skills, and he is no longer the melee novice who didn't know any fighting skills at all. Up. With the same bullet time as opening and closing, at the moment Lu Chuang's melee ability definitely surpasses Natasha Romanoff. It was almost a subconscious reaction. Before Lu Chuang realized what to do, his body followed his instinct, his arm muscles tensed, and he punched Natasha Romanoff with his right fist. Just as Natasha Romanoff raised his arm to block it, Lu Chuang's vacant right fist suddenly released, and his left arm suddenly exerted force, punching Natasha Romanoff's abdomen. Well. There was a muffled sound, and Natasha Romanoff immediately let out a suppressed cry of pain. Even Natasha Romanoff, who had received beating training, could hardly resist this force beyond ordinary people. Natasha Romanoff, aware of her current dangerous situation, ignored the pain in her abdomen and raised her high-tech bracelet to shoot at Lu Chuang. After half a second, nothing happened. Looking at the high-tech bracelet spinning on Lu Chuang's finger, Natasha Romanoff fell silent. How to fight this? Under Natasha Romanoff's gritted teeth expression, Lu Chuang then threw out a bottle of irritating liquid spray, and said cheerfully, "Didn't I tell you a long time ago, don't play melee with a thief, unless you don't have money." Natasha Romanoff took a deep breath and said, "Your ability is indeed very strong, but our people have completely sealed off this area outside. It is impossible for you to escape now, but I can see that you have no hostility towards us. Maybe we can sit down and have a good talk." There is really no hostility. That is to knock out a bunch of S.H.I.E.L.D. agents. Anyway, there is no dead man, and Natasha Romanoff will forcefully treat it as if there is no hostility. The most important thing now is to stabilize Lu Chuang. Natasha Romanoff has already transmitted everything that happened here through the communicator, and S.H.I.E.L.D. has already started to arrange manpower for support. According to Natasha Romanoff, the chances of Lu Chuang escaping are basically zero. Well, I agree with you. Lu Chuang nodded. You mean, you agree to sit down and have a good talk? Natasha Romanoff secretly delighted. If Lu Chuang is willing to give up resistance, definitely is the best. No, I mean I agree with what you said, my ability is very strong. While Lu Chuang was speaking, he suddenly punched Natasha Romanoff on the head with a heavy punch, causing her to faint instantly. Immediately afterwards, Lu Chuang picked up the communicator in Natasha Romanoff's ear. "Romanov agent, everyone is in place and ready to act at any time, can you report your current status?" "Definitely can." A slightly hoarse sexy female voice suddenly came out of Lu Chuang's mouth, which was completely similar to Natasha Romanoff's voice. He glanced at the unconscious Natasha Romanoff, and said to the communicator, "The attacker has lost his combat ability." "Ah?" The voice on the communicator was a bit puzzled. "Agent Romanov, didn't you say that you told us in code that we couldn't solve the attackers and needed us to arrange support? There is such a thing?" Lu Chuang reacted quickly, and Jonko came. "The situation has changed. After my desperate struggle, I have succeeded in sneak attacking that handsome-looking attacker. Now the other party is in a coma, send someone in quickly." The other party did not doubt Lu Chuang's identity, and immediately said after hearing Lu Chuang's words, "Okay, I understand, we will arrange it immediately." 10 minutes later, Yinpai's S.H.I.E.L.D. agent arrived at the scene. They spotted Natasha Romanoff wandering the factory in leather and a high-tech wristband. At the moment she was looking left and right, as if she was looking for something. Thinking that the other party had discovered something important, the man leading the team immediately ran over and asked, "Agent Romanov, did you find anything?" "Have." Natasha Romanoff nodded, and said with a serious face, "I found a very important thing." "Why?" The man looked solemn. "Please tell me, I will arrange it immediately." Natasha Romanoff patted the S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, and said with great relief, "Then I'm not welcome, It's like this factory is too big, I may be lost, find a personally take me out. Can you still get lost as an agent? The man hesitated. But, you haven't led us to find the attacker. Natasha Romanoff pointed in a direction. The handsome attacker is inside, you go in and find it, I have other venues to catch up, I don't have time to waste here. For some reason, men always find this Natasha Romanoff weird. But the official rank can beat Deadman, let alone Natasha Romanoff, the famous Black Widow. The man didn't question Natasha Romanoff's words, and said to a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, take Romanoff agent out of here. The S.H.I.E.L.D. agent nodded, and took Natasha Romanoff to the outside of Tohiro. Led by S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, Natasha Romanoff walked out of the factory. At the moment S.H.I.E.L.D. has sealed off the entire factory, a group of S.H.I.E.L.D. agents are guarding outside, and 2 helicopters with the S.H.I.E.L.D. logo are hovering above the sky, and the searchlights are shining on the exit of the factory. When Natasha Romanoff came out of the factory, many people squinted at Natasha Romanoff. After all, she is the Black Widow of S.H.I.E.L.D. and her charm is definitely beyond words. Agent Romanov, do you need me to arrange a vehicle for you? The S.H.I.E.L.D. agent who led the way said enthusiastically. Is there such a good thing? Natasha Romanoff frowned. All right then, you arrange a military car for me. Okay. Please wait a moment. The S.H.I.E.L.D. agent nodded, and immediately ran away. Not long after, Natasha Romanoff saw the other party driving a black pickup truck, and it parked in front of her very intimately, then got out of the car and greeted her with a smile. Agent Romanoff, this car drives more steadily, you drive this car. Natasha Romanoff patted the S.H.I.E.L.D. agent on the shoulder, showing a bright smile. It's really troublesome for you, it is a great honor for S.H.I.E.L.D. to have a good employee like you. If there is a chance, I will replace you in front of the director. Say something nice. Feeling the huge force coming from his shoulders, the S.H.I.E.L.D. agent's body couldn't help but shake a few times, almost unable to stand still. The S.H.I.E.L.D. agent grinned in pain, secretly thinking that the hand strength of the Romanov agent is really strong, stronger than the average adult man. It is worthy of being the top agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. This is what I should do. The S.H.I.E.L.D. agent said with a forced smile. Under his gaze, Natasha Romanoff sat in the driver's seat of the pickup truck, and soon started the car and drove away. There was no obstacle in the process. After the pickup truck passed through the S.H.I.E.L.D.'s blockade area, Natasha Romanoff suddenly stepped on the accelerator, and the pickup truck accelerated and disappeared from everyone's sight. Seeing the shadow of the black pickup truck disappear, the S.H.I.E.L.D. agent turned around and walked towards factory. As soon as he reached the factory gate, he saw his team leader leading a large number of S.H.I.E.L.D. agents rushing out. Seeing his appearance, the captain suddenly asked, the Romanov agent just now, where did she go? Already drove away. The S.H.I.E.L.D. agent replied honestly. What? The captain's expression was very ugly, and then 2 figures came out from behind him. One of them was Phil Coulson, and another tall figure was Natasha Romanoff who had just left. Ignoring the hellish expression on this S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, Natasha Romanoff said to Phil Coulson with a solemn face. That guy has already left the blockade area, and it may be too late to hunt him down now, and he has a disguise ability that we don't know about at all. Just now, the captain found them in the corner, and after waking up on the spot, they learned that Natasha Romanoff, who was behaving strangely, had walked out of the factory. Natasha Romanoff immediately identified herself with a special code. Now everyone understands that the Natasha Romanoff who left just now is a fake at all. Phil Coulson rubbed the back of his aching head, a few strands of hair fell on his hands, and he said sadly, it seems that we will have to re-evaluate him after we go back. His problems can no longer be continued according to normal events. Dealt with. On the other side, a black pickup parked in the suburbs. I saw Natasha Romanoff getting out of the car, and the whole person suddenly became blurred, as if the electronic product was badly connected, and the screen was flickering. Natasha Romanoff's face gradually dissipated, and then a young face appeared, which turned out to be Lu Chuang who should have appeared in the factory. Disguise. 100% restore the external image of the designated target. Yes, this Natasha Romanoff is Lu Chuang in disguise. After Lu Chuang used disguise, a thin film formed outside his body. In the eyes of outsiders, Lu Chuang's appearance has become Natasha Romanoff. Even the clothes and figure are exactly the same as Natasha Romanoff. But Lu Chuang, originally there will be no change in body structure. It's just an effect similar to tricking the vision. Fortunately, the body has not changed, otherwise Lu Chuang would not know how to look directly at his body in the future. Taking off the communicator in his ear and throwing it into the car, Lu Chuang, relying on the ability of a super high school spy, cleaned up the traces left by himself, and then disappeared into the night humming a little song. Hey, buddy, you really made a lot of money this time. With a bounty of 20 million United States dollars, you have broken the highest record in our bar. I treat you to drink this drink, it's free. A few days later, on the second floor of Sister Margaret's bar, Weasel looked at Lu Chuang with excitement. Instead of handing in the task downstairs as usual, they came to the second set of the bar that Lu Chuang had never been to. After all, the amount of reward offered this time was a bit high, and the mixed environment downstairs was not very convenient, so the Weasel simply brought Lu Chuang to his rest area, where he could collect Lu Chuang's reward. Lu Chuang glanced at the Coke on the table, and said with disdain, "You are ashamed to take out Coke as a treat." As a broker, Weasel must have earned a lot of agency fees, otherwise Weasel would not be so excited. That can't be said, you know. I also have to maintain the daily expenses of the bar, which is not a small amount, so I originally didn't have much money. The Weasel cried poorly every day, and then suddenly changed his voice. By the way, your employer is very satisfied with your completion of the bounty and said that he wants to invite you to meet, and the place is in Chinatown. Do you want to go and have a look? Don't see. Lu Chuang resolutely refused, and the money has already been taken, so what's so interesting about it? Weasel said. Aren't you really going to take a look? It's one of the largest gangs in New York, the Demon Gang. They were rivals with the Magia Gang before. Now you help them solve the Magia Gang. They must be very grateful to you. Maybe there are benefits waiting for you. Hearing Weasel's persuasion, Lu Chuang asked suspiciously, Weasel, you probably took money from others, so speak for them. Ha, ha ha, how is it possible? How could I have received money from the Demon Gang? I didn't say it was the Devil Gang. Seeing that he was exposed, Weasel said awkwardly, okay, I admit it, the leader of the Devil Gang contacted me on the dark web. He wanted to thank you for your help in person. I think he seems very sincere, so I will help him. I ask you this question, but don't worry, I definitely didn't disclose your information. Sincerity is false, and benefits are true. Lu Chuang curled his lips, reluctantly believing what he said. Weasel still has some professional ethics as a broker. Definitely, if life is at stake, Lu Chuang guarantees that this guy has a softer mouth than anyone who is as unreliable as Wade. You tell him, next time. Lu Chuang said something perfunctory, and stopped the topic, and asked, Weasel, I have a big deal here, and since we have known each other for so long, I can now take advantage of you. When the Weasel heard that there was such a good thing, he decisively left the matter of the Devil Gang behind. Can you tell me how big this big deal is? Not much, just 50 million United States dollars. Weasel looked puzzled. Why did this conversation sound so familiar? He suddenly recalled something, and asked with a dark face. If I'm not wrong, this big deal is not related to the 50 million figures you mentioned earlier, right? You know all about this. Lu Chuang was a little surprised. What he was about to talk about was steel armor. Beforehand, I don't buy toys worth 50 million United States dollars here. What daydream are you doing? You want to buy 50 million United States dollars. I suspect you are thinking about farts. You think that technology and labor don't cost money, and you need to sell it for at least hundreds of millions. Hearing Lu Chuang's confident tone, Weasel was a little speechless. Does the technology and labor of a toy cost so much money, even say hundreds of millions? If you don't brag, you will die. Lu Chuang didn't explain either. He didn't want others to know about the steel armor. I'm not looking for you to buy, but to buy some materials from you. Material? Weasel wondered. What material needs 50 million United States dollars? That's it. Lu Chuang took out a list from his pocket and handed it to Weasel. The Weasel picked up the list curiously, and said, it's gold titanium alloy, superconducting wire, rotating shaft. Just after reading the first few materials, the Weasel couldn't read any more. He raised his head and looked at Lu Chuang with a ridiculous face. Are you sure this is the material you want? You don't? How could there be? You think I'm omnipotent? The weasel said excitedly. I can still collect the materials you asked for before, but look at what is on this list. Gold and titanium alloys. Hell. What illusion makes you think that there are raw materials for making rockets? Weasel is not a material or arms manufacturer. He is just a middleman. Just like a commissioned task, all he provided to Lu Chuang before were channels. In fact, it was someone else who actually provided the goods, and the weasel was only responsible for reaching a deal for both parties. But the weasel looked at the list in his hand. Aeronautical materials, military materials, and a whole bunch of weird composite materials. Even a weasel can't figure out which channel has the ability to take Lu Chuang's big deal worth 50 million United States dollars. Is there no other way? Lu Chuang asked unwillingly. If the material problem cannot be solved, there is no way to make his super battlesuit. Weasel shook his head helplessly. I have no choice, but if you want to collect these materials, you can choose to contact those big companies for cooperation, such as Stark Industrial Group. With their ability, they will definitely be able to provide these materials. Lu Chuang had to admit that this is indeed a way. But the problem is that he wants these materials, just to make a super battlesuit, and then defeat Tony Stark's steel armor. This is equivalent to making blueprints for steel armor stolen from Tony Stark, using materials purchased by Tony Stark's company to make a super battlesuit, and finally wearing this super battlesuit to fight Tony Stark himself. Well, it sounds tempting. However, Lu Chuang gave up after thinking about it. He didn't need to think about it. He knew that he, an ordinary person, suddenly found cooperation with a big company like Stark Industrial Group, which would inevitably arouse Stark Industrial Group's high suspicion. Putting this aside, with the size of Stark Industrial Group, Lu Chuang feels that Stark Industrial Group may not be interested in his transaction amount of only 50 million United States dollars. After all, any few luxury cars in their boss's house have already exceeded this amount as up. Thinking of this, Lu Chuang couldn't help but sigh. The weasel asked suspiciously. Why, can this method not work? Lu Chuang shook his head and sighed. Now I realize that money can't be spent. Going there is worse than having no money. Forget it, you don't understand. Weasel. This guy is showing off. This must be showing off, right? Since the Stark Industrial Group has no choice, let's find the Osborne Industrial Group. Although their group focuses on biotechnology, their overall strength is not weaker than Stark's. Industry Group. If it doesn't work, you can also consider Hank Mo Advanced Industries. Weasel said so, but he didn't think that Lu Chuang could cooperate with these groups. Sometimes the status gap is there, and it can't be solved by money alone. Snapped. Lu Chuang patted the table suddenly and stood up. This idea is good. I can go to Hank Mo Advanced Industry. Are you sure? As far as I know, after Tony Stark announced the closure of the weapons department, Hank Mo Advanced Industries has replaced Stark Industries Group as the head of the American military. For arms suppliers, Hank Mo Advanced Industries is at its hottest moment, and if you want to find them to cooperate, you may have to queue up from the back. I didn't say we would cooperate. Weasel wondered. If you don't cooperate, how will you buy those materials? But Lu Chuang smiled mysteriously. I can ask their boss to borrow it. Mr. Stark, please continue the topic just now. Mr. Stark, can you concentrate on listening to me? On the TV, the live broadcast of the Senate Armed Services Committee is being broadcast. The actor in this incident has Tony Stark again. And the content of this Senate Armed Services Committee is about Tony Stark's steel armor. In the live broadcast, Tony Stark was sitting in the dock, with an obvious indifference on his face, even in front of everyone, flirting with his assistant Potts sitting in the back, as if he didn't put the court in front of him at all. The look in the eyes. In other words, he didn't pay attention to the senators sitting above. The reason is simple. These senators think Tony Stark's steel armor is an extremely dangerous weapon, and the funniest thing is that Senator Stern, the head of the military committee, even asked Tony Stark to hand over the steel armor voluntarily. With Tony Stark's character, it is absolutely impossible to think about it. Ever since, Senator Stern was embarrassed. It's good that Tony Stark didn't speak. As soon as he spoke, he sprayed venom at Senator Stern crazily. Senator Stern was no match for Tony Stark's venomous tongue. He was sprayed speechless on the spot, but there was nothing he could do. He dared not force Tony Stark, the big capitalist. There was no other way. Senator Stern had no choice but to use the last resort. Although I am not a weapons expert, we have invited a weapons expert, and now I want to summon Justin Hammer, the current main weapons contractor of the Ministry of Defense. Immediately afterwards, a man with glasses in a suit and leather shoes appeared on the TV screen. It's him. Seeing this person's appearance, Lu Chuang immediately slapped the sofa excitedly. At the moment it was noon. Little Peter hadn't finished school yet, so now there are only Lu Chuang and Lorna at home. These days Lu Chuang has been paying attention to the news. After hearing that Tony Stark participated in a Senate Armed Services Committee, he waited in front of the TV. As for Lorna, she has nothing to do now, so she simply sits on the sofa with Lu Chuang and watches the Senate Armed Services Committee. Not to mention, with Tony Stark, a venomous guy, the originally boring live broadcast has instant effects layman, he looked in without knowing it. As a result, Lu Chuang's actions startled Lorna. Why are you crazy? Lu Chuang said confidently. We have found a way to make super battlesuit materials. You mean the material on that list? Lorna looked weird. As Little Peter's assistant, Lorna naturally knew what materials Lu Chuang was referring to, and also knew how rare and expensive those materials were. At that time, Lorna was dumbfounded at the budget estimate of 50 million United States dollars. She never thought that it would cost such a large amount of money to make a super battlesuit, and the most important thing is that Lu Chuang really seems to have 50 million United States dollars. USD, actually started to look for channels to buy. Is it true that all the priests nowadays are so rich? Lu Chuang didn't know what Lorna was thinking. He nodded his head. Yes, after waiting patiently for so many days, I finally waited for this moment. I believe we can solve the material problem of the super battlesuit soon. From now on, Little Peter will leave it to you. Hearing the last sentence, Lorna suddenly felt something wrong. Wait, what do you mean? Lu Chuang said seriously. I'm going to leave home for a while. During the time I'm not at home, please help me take care of my home and remember to take good care of Little Peter. The most important thing is to supervise him to do exercises every day. Such a sudden decision made Lorna feel a little ridiculous. Where are you going? Monaco. Monaco Monte Carlo F1 Grand Prix, known as one of the world's 4 famous car races, is held every year at the Monaco circuit. At this time of year, it will attract countless tourists from other places. Watch. However, this year's Monaco Grand Prix seems to be more lively than ever. Because just now, Tony Stark, the top-ranking Low Bacon, suddenly announced that he would participate in this race, and temporarily replaced a racer in the race car. This crazy decision shocked everyone, even the person in charge of the race. Come forward to persuade Tony Stark. After all, racing cars are dangerous. If something happens to Tony Stark, he can't afford to sell the entire Monaco Grand Prix. But Tony Stark's attitude was extremely firm, and the person in charge could only let him do it. Who made Tony Stark the biggest investor in their Monaco Grand Prix. With the roar of the car, many cars started at the same time, including the jammed car driven by Tony Stark. However, in the middle of the race, a long-haired Russian man with a scruffy appearance and a fleshy face suddenly broke into the racing track with a toothpick in his mouth. Walk slowly in the center of the racing track. Seeing Tony Stark's racing car rushing towards him, Ivan Wong turned his head and spat out the toothpick in his mouth, and instantly whipped out 2 whips from his sleeve. Zizi Lala. Accompanied by the terrifying sound of the electric current, the 2 long whips became brighter. Countless small electric currents twisted crazily like small snakes, and flowed along the metal wires towards the body of the big Russian Ross. Burnt to nothing, revealing the metal fittings inside the suit. And the small arc reactor on the chest. Boom. Ivan Wong swung his whip violently, and the terrifying electric current high temperature instantly tore apart the oncoming racing car, and the entire car body was cut in half neatly. At the moment, Tony Stark in the car was knocked dizzy, but he was wearing a seatbelt and had only minor scratches. Tony Stark took off his helmet with difficulty, only to see Ivan Wong walking towards him slowly dragging 2 long whips with electric current intertwined. The sharp electric current sound made Tony Stark's scalp tingle for a while. Could this guy have come to find him on purpose? Tony Stark swallowed, and struggled to get out of the racing car. Now that the steel armor was not by his side, his body couldn't take a whip, so it was better to get away from him quickly. At this moment, Tony Stark suddenly found that the seatbelt couldn't be opened, it seemed to be stuck. Isn't it? Tony Stark's eyes widened. The seatbelt that had saved his life turned into a cage to trap him at this moment. Seeing that the Russian Ross was getting closer and closer to him, Tony Stark was almost desperate. Snapped. A big hand suddenly reached into the car and ripped Tony Stark's seatbelt. Before Tony Stark could react, the hand grabbed his collar and pulled him out of the racing car, then threw him to the ground. Tony Stark, who escaped from death, looked over quickly, and saw that the person who rescued him was an ordinary-looking, dark-skinned Asian, who seemed to be here to help him. Tony Stark was very grateful. At the same time, he saw that Ivan Wonk had come over, and said anxiously, "Get out of here quickly, this place is very dangerous." Ivan Wonk stared at the Asian man with cold eyes. He thought the same as Tony Stark. He thought that the Asian man came to help Tony Stark, but he didn't care at all, since he came to help his enemy Tony Stark. Then follow the other party, let's die together. Just when Ivan Wonk was about to wield the long whip, I saw two whips suddenly appeared in the hands of this Asian man. Different from Ivan Wonk's electric current long whip, these two whips did not have any special effects, they were just ordinary whips. He looked at the sluggish Tony Stark, and said with a grin, "You're right, it's really dangerous here, damn Tony Stark, you tricked me into waiting on the rooftop all night. Today I am here for revenge, Ivan Vanki." Tony Stark. Who the hell are you? I don't know you at all. And, when did I lie to someone to wait on the rooftop all night? Before Tony Stark could open his mouth to refute, Lu Chuang, disguised as Principal Gu, flicked his whip and slapped Tony Stark's ass. Ah! Tony Stark let out a pain, and when he found out that Lu Chuang was his enemy, he immediately walked away from him with his hands on his butt. When Ivan Vanki heard that Lu Chuang also came to find revenge on Tony Stark, and also used double whips like him, he immediately felt a sense of recognition in his heart, and his hostility towards Lu Chuang suddenly dropped a lot. Ignoring Lu Chuang beside him, Ivan Wonk's eyes flashed coldly, and he swung the electric current long whip at Tony Stark's position. The light blue long whip roared towards him with a terrifying temperature. Tony Stark completely ignored the image. A lazy donkey came and rolled, narrowly avoiding the attack of the long whip. Looking at the black welts on the ground emitting traces of white smoke, Tony Stark felt a chill run down his back. If it hit him, he would not have died on the spot. Snapped. Ah! Damn it! Being successfully attacked by Lu Chuang's whip again, Tony Stark clutched his ass and jumped out, with a distorted expression. For Tony Stark, now is simply a double torture of physical and mental. Physically, Ivan Vanki's electric current long whip can easily take him away, and he is guaranteed to burp as soon as he hits the whip. Mentally, although Lu Chuang's ordinary long whip is far less powerful than the electric current long whip, and it can't bring too much damage to Tony Stark, it is extremely insulting. Every whip seems to be deliberately aimed at his buttocks. Tony Stark felt ashamed of himself. Hell, do people like to use whips as weapons these days? Under the attack of Lu Chuang and Ivan Wonk, Tony Stark kept dodging in embarrassment, suffering unspeakably. Ivan Wonk's attack is not bad, but the special effects look rather bluffing, and the attack trajectory can barely be predicted. But Lu Chuang's attack is not so easy to dodge, not only extremely fast, but also extremely high frequency. It is impossible to defend against it. Tony Stark was so pumped that he screamed again and again. He felt that his butt was about to be swollen. Fortunately, his support arrived soon. A black luxury car broke into the racing track, slammed on the accelerator and rushed towards Lu Chuang and Ivan Vanki. Be careful. Lu Chuang's pupils shrank suddenly, and he immediately pushed away his teammate Ivan Wonk. Ivan Vanki was about to attack the luxury car, but a huge amount of force came from behind, and he uncontrollably crashed into the luxury car head-on. Ivan Vanki. Boom! Ivan Wonk was hit by a luxury car and hit the guardrail. His hands were hanging down on his sides, his body was squeezed by the front of the car and he couldn't move. Damn Tony Stark, dare to hurt my teammates. Lu Chuang saw Ivan Wonk's miserable situation, and said angrily, "Little whip, go at ease, I will avenge you." The whip is also used, So why are you called Sangbian and I am called Zhaobian? And I'm not King dead yet. Ivan Wan K just wanted to speak, but he didn't hold back for a while, spewed a mouthful of blood from his mouth, and passed out on the spot. Seeing Ivan Vanki fainted by Tony Stark, Lu Chuang looked at Tony angrily. Stark. It's all your fault. The corner of Tony Stark's mouth twitched, and he retorted. I saw it, obviously you pushed him over. If you still want to quibble, eat my lightning 5 consecutive whips. Lu Chuang didn't give Tony Stark a chance to refute. He quickly swung his whip towards Tony Stark, and hit his ass 5 times in a row. Ah! Tony Stark jumped and shouted to Potts in the back seat of the luxury car, Potts, throw the box out. Hearing his words, Potts hurriedly threw the box in his hand. Snapped. There was another crisp sound. Enduring the pain, Tony Stark stretched out his foot and stepped on the golden red box. With the sound of machinery, the golden red box immediately turned into a simple pair of steel armor. Armed on Tony Stark. The eyes of the mask lit up, and Tony Stark in steel armor stood in front of Lu Chuang, gritted his teeth and said, I promise, I'll kick your ass right next time. Share. Feeling the pain in his ass, now Tony Stark just wants to give everything back to Lu Chuang. Let the goddamn guy get his ass spanked too. Tony Stark took a fierce step forward, about to strike at Lu Chuang. As a result, Lu Chuang was the first to throw away the 2 whips, lay flat on the ground, and shouted, Surrender, I surrender, come and catch me. Tony Stark. Work hard to get pregnant. Monaco prison, in the dark room. Tony Stark walked into the room, and saw a burly figure full of tattoos sitting on a bench, and a figure sitting beside him put his arms around his shoulders and said, Little whip, after we go out, why don't you come and work for me? How about joining my King Tony Stark squad? Tony Stark's face turned black. What the hell kind of name is that? Ivan Vanki did not respond with a cold face. To be honest, if his hands were not handcuffed now, he would really want to punch this annoying guy. What's going on? Who uncuffed him? Seeing Lu Chuang's loose hands, the prison guards who followed Tony Stark were startled, and hurried over to pin Lu Chuang down, and then re-handcuffed him. Tony Stark glanced at Lu Chuang and Ivan Wonk, and then said to the prison guard in proficient French, Give me 5 minutes. As soon as possible, please. The prison guard nodded, turned and left the small black room. Tony Stark closed the door of the small dark room, and he didn't want too many people to know the following conversation. Pretty advanced technology, but the speed is a bit low, but overall it's a pretty good imitation, Tony Stark said sarcastically. Definitely, what he said was aimed at Ivan Wonk and had nothing to do with Lu Chuang. Tony Stark stared at Ivan Wonk. I'm curious, where did you steal my blueprint? After the two were arrested by the Monaco government, Tony Stark studied Ivan Vanki's device, but he was horrified to find that the energy supply device on Ivan Vanki's chest was very similar to his small arc reactor, which was not a random imitation can be made. Unless, the other party has the blueprint of the small arc reactor. Steal? Ivan Wonk sneered, and said in a hoarse voice. If you want to talk about thieves, you Stark family are the real thieves. This blueprint belongs to my father, Anton Wonk. Anton Vanki? Tony Stark frowned, secretly decided to go back and investigate the name. Tony Stark, I offer you a word, the death method of palladium poisoning is very painful. Ivan Wonk stared at Tony Stark, his words were full of ridicule. As a top physicist Ivan Wonk couldn't see the predicament Tony Stark was facing now. Because Tony Stark was attacked by terrorists in Afghanistan, although Tony Stark barely recovered his life, there were still fragments of the bomb in his body around his heart. Once these fragments entered his heart, he would definitely die. In order to save his life, a doctor installed an electromagnet on Tony Stark's chest, powered by a battery, so that adsorbent could hold the shrapnel and prevent it from advancing to the heart diaphragm. However, the disadvantages of the battery are obvious. Not only is it large in size, but it also has a small battery capacity. It is very difficult to even maintain the daily supply of the electromagnet, let alone drive the steel helmet. Therefore, based on the arc reactor technology left by his father, Tony Stark developed a small arc reactor, which is used as an energy supply source for maintaining electromagnets and steel armor. However, the trouble is that the arc reactor contains a large amount of palladium, which is harmful to the human body. If Tony Stark used it to maintain the normal operation of the electromagnet, there would be no problem, but if he put on steel armor and increased the consumption of the arc reactor, then the palladium element would definitely start to corrode Tony Stark's body. In Ivan Wonk's view, Tony Stark's behavior is undoubtedly seeking his own death. Although you look pretty when you hit me in steel armor, but you look really embarrassed with metal poisoning. Hearing Ivan Wonk's words, Tony Stark's expression froze a bit. Indeed, he has been troubled by this matter all this time, and he is also aware of the consequences of palladium poisoning, so he decided to do some crazy things before he died, such as participating in dangerous racing competitions. But Tony Stark still did not show any weakness. Compared to caring about me, you should care about yourself. I hope the prisoners in the Monaco prison will not be so enthusiastic. Out of humanitarian concerns, I will give you a box of soap at that time. With that said, Tony Stark turned to look at Lu Chuang. As for you, where did you come from? I don't remember seeing you before. Tony Stark has checked Lu Chuang's information, and found nothing in terms of appearance and fingerprints, and he has no impression of Lu Chuang's face, let alone the fact that he tricked him to the rooftop and waited all night. Lu Chuang said angrily, "At the beginning, I found you and wanted to show you my technological research, and then you agreed and said that I would wait for you on the rooftop, but I didn't even get any wind blowing on the rooftop all night. I waited for you, and later I found out that you were having sex with a woman that night, and you forgot about me after the sex the next day." There is such a thing. Tony Stark froze, sounding like something he could actually do. Lu Chuang's words were not finished. However, I was not the only one waiting on the rooftop that night. There were at least a dozen of them. After our communication, it turns out that we were all sent pigeons by you. Gone. Tony Stark. Ivan Wonk looked at Tony Stark with disdain on his face. Sure enough, people with the surname Stark are not good people. Lu Chuang suddenly said sullenly, "So, we reached a mutual agreement on the rooftop and formed a team to blast Tony Stark together. The purpose is to blast Tony Stark. And I am their vanguard. I believe that in the near future, my teammates will come to the door one by one. You just wash your neck and wait at home." The corner of Tony Stark's mouth twitched. He didn't notice it before, but now he felt that his enemies seemed a little too much. After this trip back, should I hire more bodyguards? There is a loophole. At this moment, Lu Chuang broke free from the handcuffs suddenly, stepped on the bench and jumped on top of Tony Stark. Under Tony Stark's frightened gaze, Lu Chuang raised his mana-wrapped fist and slammed it into his eye socket. Ivan Wonk was so addicted to seeing it, he wished he could break free from the handcuffs and punch Tony Stark a few times. Hearing the commotion in the small black room, the prison guard guarding the door rushed in immediately. "Damn it, his handcuffs are off again. Help Mr. Stark. Let go. Let me go." After a while of jumping around, the prison guards finally separated Lu Chuang and Tony Stark with difficulty, and put handcuffs on Lu Chuang again. At the moment Tony Stark looked extremely embarrassed. His hair was disheveled like a chicken coop, and a few buttons of his well-trimmed suit jacket were unbuttoned, revealing a small arc on his chest. "Mr. Stark, please get out of here. We need to send these two prisoners to the cell," the prison guard said to Tony Stark. With the current situation, Tony Stark is no longer fit to stay here. Tony Stark glared at Lu Chuang, and left the small black room surrounded by prison guards. However, Tony Stark didn't notice that the black lines around his chest were gradually fading away. If he checked his body at this time, he would find that at the moment the palladium element in his body had been completely removed, at least before he put on the steel armor again. His life will not be in any danger. After Tony Stark left, Lu Chuang and Ivan Wonk were taken down by prison guards and locked in separate cells. Near night, in Ivan Vanke's single cell, Ivan Wonk, who was wearing a prison uniform, was sitting on the wooden bed when he suddenly saw a prison guard delivering food to his door. At first, Ivan Wonk didn't take it seriously, until he found a note stuck under the cup and a time bomb inside the mashed potatoes. Ivan Wonk suddenly narrowed his eyes. Immediately afterwards, the prison guard brought in another prisoner with the same number as him, and gave him the key by the way. Ivan Vanke instantly realized that someone was secretly helping him, and he found a substitute for himself. Without hesitation, Ivan directly stunned the prisoner in front of him, then installed the bomb on the wall, opened the iron door with the key and walked out of the cell. Yo, isn't this a little whip? Hearing the familiar voice, Ivan Vanki turned his head a little stiffly. I saw Lu Chuang standing in front of a prison cell. The iron door behind him was wide open. Seeing Ivan Vanki passing by, Lu Chuang said happily. What a coincidence, you also escaped from prison. Ivan Wonk. If it wasn't for the bad surroundings, Ivan Wonk would have thought that this guy had just left the house and saw his neighbors saying hello. Seeing Lu Chuang's appearance, Ivan Wonk did not choose to act. Based on the picture he saw just now, he definitely believed that Lu Chuang, like himself, was rescued by the dark people. Boom. Ivan Wonk's cell suddenly exploded, and the huge amounts of explosion resounded throughout the prison. With the wailing of the siren, the prison instantly became extremely chaotic, and the sound of chaotic footsteps came from not far away. Lu Chuang and Ivan Wonk knew that they could not stay here any longer, and they quickly ran to the stairs, but the shouts of prison guards were heard from the bottom of the stairs, and it was obvious that a large number of prison guards were coming up. At this time, Lu Chuang's ears moved slightly, and when he turned his head, he saw 2 prison guards running towards him. When the 2 prison guards saw Lu Chuang at the same time, they couldn't help being stunned for a moment, but the situation was urgent and there was no time to think about it. They took out the hoods from their waists and put them on the heads of Lu Chuang and Ivan Wonk. These 2 are death row prisoners, we will take them down. Shouting, the 2 prison guards grabbed the 2 of them and ran down. No one stopped the process, and the 2 were taken away from the floor just like that. Afterwards, Lu Chuang felt that he was sitting in the same seat, and there was a slight tremor under the sound of the engine starting. Lu Chuang knew that he was being sent into the car, so he didn't resist, humming a little song and waiting patiently. After an unknown amount of time, Lu Chuang felt that the car seemed to have stopped. Then, Lu Chuang's hood was suddenly lifted, and Ivan Wonk was seen sitting opposite him, and the prison guard led them out of the car. Boomian is an extremely spacious factory building, and the most eye-catching thing is the private jet. And there is a dining table in front of the plane. A man wearing gold-rimmed glasses is enjoying dessert. When he sees someone getting off the car, he opens his arms exaggeratedly and greets him. Look who is here. Wait a minute, who is this guy? Lu Chuang had seen this eye-eyed man on TV before. It was Justin Hammer who appeared in the Senate Armed Services Committee. Obviously, he was the black hand behind the prison robbery. At the moment, Hammer pointed at Lu Chuang and looked at the prison guard in astonishment. He didn't remember that there was an Asian on his invitation list. The prison guard's face was very ugly. There was a little accident, we don't know when this prisoner escaped from the cell, and he walked with Ivan Vanki. The situation was more urgent. In order not to expose our actions, we had to put him bring together. Coming. Hammer couldn't understand French, but someone who seemed to be the butler behind him translated for him. After listening to the butler's translation, Hammer's expression changed drastically, and he cursed angrily, "Are you kidding? You think this is a taxi, and you can just take one more person away?" Ivan Vanki was a little stunned. Lu Chuang's jailbreak was not arranged by the other party? Perhaps out of anger, Hammer poked the prison guard's chest fiercely with his fingers. All I want is this Russian Ross, not a useless Asian. What do I want him to do? Could he also make steel armor? It's steel armor, what's the big deal? Lu Chuang interrupted Hammer suddenly. Hearing this, Hammer turned his head to look at Lu Chuang, and scolded domineeringly. Steel armor is no big deal, who do you think you are? What right do you have to say such things? At this moment, Hammer felt that the other party looked familiar, and asked uncertainly. Are you the Asian who attacked Tony Stark on the track? Hammer is a little face blind to Asians. He didn't recognize Lu Chuang's face at first, but now he looked carefully, only to find that the other party was actually attacking Tony Tower with Ivan Vanki. Grams of Asians. Lu Chuang said proudly, it was me, by the way. Zhaobian was beaten to the ground by Tony Stark, and Tony Stark was beaten to the ground by me begging for mercy. Ivan Vanki. Hammer was a little speechless. Did I really think I hadn't watched the live broadcast? As soon as Tony Stark puts on his steel armor, you drop to the ground and surrender. Who are you showing this proud look of yours to? After knowing Lu Chuang's identity, Hammer's face still didn't improve. Listen. I'm really happy that you taught that bastard Tony Stark a lesson, but it doesn't mean that I'm interested in you. Hammer said impatiently. I'm not a homeless shelter, I'm not someone everyone is eligible to stay here. Lu Chuang smiled slightly, and took out a mineral water bottle from his arms that he had brought with him when he escaped from prison, and said mysteriously, do you know what this is? Looking at the half of the water in the bottle that seemed to be drunk by someone, Hammer sneered sarcastically. Isn't it just a bottle of ordinary mineral water? Don't you think I haven't even seen mineral water? Lu Chuang shook his head and explained. This is not ordinary water. This is a panacea developed by me alone. Just drink it to remove all harmful toxins in the body, and it also has the effect of curing diseases. Universal potion. Hammer looked at the bottle in Lu Chuang's hand with his cheeks twitching slightly. No matter how he looked at it, this bottle of water was obviously a bottle of mineral water that couldn't be more ordinary. Even the brand of mineral water was posted on the outside of the bottle. Lu Chuang saw Hammer's suspicion, and said with contempt, as a businessman, you can't even verify this basic operation, can you? Hammer choked suddenly, he had no way to refute this sentence. After his complexion changed for a while, Hanmo said with a gloomy face, if you dare to lie to me, you will die. After finishing speaking, Hammer winked at the housekeeper and told him to leave with the bottle of mineral water. After a long time, the butler came back and whispered something in Hammer's ear. Hammer's eyes suddenly widened, and he asked in disbelief, does it really work? After being confirmed by the housekeeper, Hammer turned his head to look at Lu Chuang. His eyes suddenly became hot, and his tone couldn't restrain his excitement. Unbelievable. That bottle of mineral water, oh no. The elixir is really effective. You can't believe it, just now, that bottle of panacea stabilized the condition of a critically ill patient, and his health began to improve. Hearing these words, Ivan Wonk, who rarely spoke, raised his eyes slightly, and looked at Lu Chuang with a little surprise. This guy actually has such abilities. Lu Chuang was very calm. I've said it all. This is a panacea developed by me alone, it can cure all diseases. In fact, Lu Chuang secretly added a little mana to the water, which is the same as the holy water that the vampire drank back then, but the effect will be slightly weakened, not as significant as Lu Chuang's direct infusion of mana into the soul. But even so, it is enough to fool Hammer. Sure enough, Hammer seemed to change his face. The impatience on his face was swept away, replaced by a warm smile, and he made a gentleman's apology etiquette to Lu Chuang. Oh, my dear friend, please forgive my rudeness and attitude just now. If you have any dissatisfaction, I am very sorry about it. Hammer is a typical businessman. All he cares about is profit. As long as it can bring him enough profit, he can do anything, such as spending money to buy the prison guards of the Monaco prison, and sending Ivan Vanki directly from he was taken out of the prison precisely because he took a fancy to Ivan Vanki's ability. And now Lu Chuang is doing the same. The astonishing effect displayed by the universal potion made Hammer see its huge potential value at once. You know, the most profitable industry in the world is medical treatment, and those seriously ill patients will definitely buy it at any cost for their own lives. Hammer can fully imagine how crazy it will be when the panacea is launched on the market. Upsurge. Although Hammer's group is not deeply involved in the medical industry, this does not prevent Hammer from spying on the panacea. Such a good thing with huge benefits must be in his hands as soon as possible. It's okay, I forgive you, it's not your fault for lack of knowledge. Lu Chuang waved his hand generously, but Hammer's expression was a little stiff when he heard his words. But in the face of huge amounts of interests, this matter seems insignificant. Since this is the case, let's forget about the unpleasant thing just now and pretend it didn't happen. Hammer tidied up his slightly messy collar, restored his polite appearance at the beginning, and brought the two of them to the dining table. The two chairs in, plus a seat belonging to Lu Chuang. After the three of them were seated, Hammer took the lead and said, I forgot to introduce myself. I am Justin Hammer, the chairman of Hammer Advanced Industries. I invite you here this time to reach some cooperation with the two of you. So businessmen have thick skins, and they were dissatisfied with the prison guards for bringing Lu Chuang here just now. But now they change their words and say that it was their initial decision to bring the two together. Ivan Wonk didn't respond, but Lu Chuang looked familiar, eating the dishes brought by the butler, and asked vaguely, "Okay, how do you want to cooperate with us?" Seeing Lu Chuang's reaction, Hammer suddenly felt that there was a joke, and immediately said, "I know you guys really want to kill Tony Stark. I also saw your performance on the track. I have to say, you really did a great job." Lu Chuang didn't speak, because he knew that there would be an essential, but next. Sure enough, Hammer paused for 2 seconds, and continued. "However, I found that you are not as good as Tony Stark, and that is the problem of resources. I think you need a reliable sponsor, such as me." Lu Chuang's eyes lit up. "Do you have more resources than Tony Stark?" Hammer was silent. His Hammer Advanced Industry is huge, but compared with Stark Industry, the resources of Hammer Advanced Industry are obviously much worse. How could his resources be comparable to Tony Stark? Hammer eased his emotions, smiled and said, "There is a little gap between me and Tony Stark, but I can still provide you with enough resources, and I think you also need my resources. This is a win-win situation. Cooperate." Lu Chuang thought for a moment, and finally nodded. "Sounds good, we agree." "Us?" Ivan Wonk's cheeks twitched fiercely. When did he say he agreed? Seeing that Ivan Wonk was still silent and pretending to be an expert, before Hammer could speak, Lu Chuang approached Ivan Wonk and whispered in his ear. "Hurry up and agree. This is a good thing. This little four-eyed guy is not short of money. 2 idiots, let's find a chance to steal his money together." Hammer. "Everyone is sitting at the same dining table. Who are you defending by talking like that?" King heard it all. Ivan Vanki obviously has his own arrogance, he said in rough English with a Russian Ross accent. "It's useless for me to ask for money." "Are you stupid?" Lu Chuang said angrily. "How do you think you were defeated by Tony Stark? Look at Tony Stark's steel armor, which not only covers the whole body, but is also made of the highest quality materials. Look at you, the material not to mention ordinary. You don't even have the money to make iron pants. What do you think is the reason?" Lu Chuang's words caused Ivan Wonk to think deeply for a while. So much so that he forgot, in fact, he was not defeated by Tony Stark at all, he was cheated by the pig teammate Lu Chuang. After being silent for half a minute, Ivan Vanki said honestly, "It's because I don't have any money." Lu Chuang said, "That's right. Think about it, you have worked so hard to scrape together a simple set of equipment, and Tony Stark has already worn several sets of equipment in rotation. Might be able to beat a heavy recurring player." Ivan Wonk couldn't understand these words, but it didn't prevent him from understanding. "You're right." Ivan Wonk nodded. "In this case, I agree." Seeing this, Hammer laughed and raised the wine glass in his hand. "Great, we have a happy cooperation." "Chuyuyu, happy cooperation." Lu Chuang raised his wine glass, and in order to match the current atmosphere, he let out a villain's signature laugh. And Ivan Vanki, who is from Russia, grabbed the bottle next to him and blew it directly. Hammer drank the red wine excitedly. "After this meal, you will follow me on a private plane back to America, and I will show you my munitions factory pill." The next day, Queens, the arms factory of Hammer Advanced Industries. "This is my munitions factory, my happy hut." Hammer took Lu Chuang and Ivan Vanki into the munitions factory, which was much larger than the gang factories Lu Chuang had seen before. Soon, they came to the depths of the munitions factory. "It's here, take a look at them, it's great, right?" Hammer pointed forward, and Lu Chuang saw 2 rows of steel armor neatly arranged. However, Lu Chuang can tell that the quality of these steel armors is not very good, even the shape reveals a strong sense of imitation, and dozens of pairs of steel armors are placed together, as if from the same counterfeit and shoddy products mass-produced by imitation factories are really a bit of a stretch. Not to mention Tony Stark's Mark series steel armor, even imitations like the Iron Overlord armor completely crush these steel armors in all aspects, and the technological 690 level of the two is obviously not at the same level. Ivan Wonk was holding a toothpick in his mouth, with a disdainful expression on his face. Obviously he didn't like this bunch of fake and inferior products either. Looking at these low-end steel armors, Lu Chuang couldn't help asking curiously, "How much did you spend on these things?" On average, each set of steel armor is worth at least 120 million USD. What? 120 million USD? Lu Chuang looked at Hammer with strange eyes. Originally, these craps of his were not worth much, but the result was completely beyond his expectation. The value was twice as high as the cost of his super battlesuit, and the money was enough for him to build double the number of super battlesuits. As expected of Hanmer Industries, which created the ex-wife, it is surprisingly reliable in terms of unreliability. At this time, Ivan Wonk walked to the steel armor console, tapped the keyboard quickly, and cracked the firewall of Hammer Industry in a few strokes. Lu Chuang saw that Hammer's face turned blue. Ivan Wonk ignored Hammer and looked down at the data of the steel armor. Very well, it seems that he has begun to familiarize himself with his job position. Hammer joked and eased the awkward atmosphere, then turned around and said to Lu Chuang, "The next thing is your job arrangement. I also found a good place for you, Hammer Medical Technology Company. You are the person in charge of the new project, and the content of the project is a panacea." "I refuse. I want to stay here." Lu Chuang interrupted Hammer directly. "Water?" Hammer's expression froze instantly. He never expected that Lu Chuang would refuse, and said absurdly, "Did you make a mistake? This is an arms factory, not a medical research institute. What are you doing here?" In Hanmer's view, Lu Chuang should be a genius who is proficient in pharmacy, otherwise Lu Chuang would not have produced such a magical panacea, and it is troublesome for such a genius in pharmacy not to stay in the medical research institute, but in the arms factory. Which kind? Lu Chuang put on an air of a master, and said indifferently, "You may not know that I, a person who studies medicine, always pays attention to doing whatever I want, and never cares about the surrounding environment." Hammer. "God damn it. This is scientific research, please be more cautious. If something goes wrong, Deadman will come. However, there is no relevant equipment and tools here. If you want to mass produce the universal medicine, only the pharmaceutical factory of Hanmer Medical Technology Company can do it." Hanmer tried to persuade Lu Chuang. Lu Chuang shook his head. "Making universal potions is not as simple as you imagined. It is impossible to make universal potions with mechanical equipment alone. At present, it is basically impossible for you to mass produce universal potions. I need time to research and improve." Hearing Lu Chuang's words, Hammer frowned. This is not the same as his good. The inability to mass produce the universal medicine means that there is no way to put it on the market directly, and he cannot make money on a large scale. After all, Hammer's plan is to promote the universal medicine to the world. Fortunately, Lu Chuang didn't say anything to death, and Hammer could still see the hope of mass production of the panacea. Hammer also wanted to persuade Lu Chuang to work in his medical technology company, but Lu Chuang's attitude was extremely firm and he wanted to stay in the munitions factory. Seeing this, Hammer had no choice but to let Lu Chuang stay in the munitions factory temporarily. Chuang can't run in his territory. Afterwards, Hammer made some arrangements for Lu Chuang and Ivan Wonk respectively, and tried his best to help them complete their work as soon as possible. Now Hammer only wants to see the mass production of steel armor and universal potion, and the market value of his Hammer Industry will definitely double dozens of times by then. Hammer thought hotly in his heart. Unfortunately, his idea is doomed to fail. Neither Lu Chuang nor Ivan Wonk could work for him obediently like this. In the afternoon, Hammer came to the arms factory again with his personal butler, wanting to check the work progress of Lu Chuang and Ivan Vanki. When he walked into the depths of the munitions factory, he saw two figures sitting in front of a table, staring at the iron pot in front of them. Their serious looks seemed to be doing academic research. Hammer was a little curious and walked towards the two of them. After Hammer approached, Hammer smelled a strong smell. He frowned and looked into the iron pot, but found that the red liquid was constantly tumbling inside, and he could vaguely see a few peppers and star anise floating on top. Hammer asked, "What are you guys doing?" Holding the bowl and chopsticks, Lu Chuang said seriously, "I can't tell, I'm developing a new type of potion." The corner of Hammer's mouth twitched. "I really didn't see it if you didn't tell me." "Alright." Lu Chuang suddenly picked up the chopsticks, picked out a piece of fat beef from the red soup and put it into the bowl. Ivan Wonk next to him didn't give in. He picked up a large piece of meat with chopsticks and put it directly into his mouth, then took a big gulp of the vodka in his hand, and shouted happily, "Ula." Seeing this scene, Wen Mo said angrily, "This is not a panacea at all." Lu Chuang shook his head, and said firmly, "No, This is the hot pot flavored panacea I developed the latest. Waldfark. Can the panacea still taste? Hammer's eyes widened, obviously not believing what he said. Lu Chuang sighed helplessly, took a pot and spoon, filled the pot with a mouthful of soup, put it into a glass bottle and threw it to Hammer casually. I don't need to say it this time. Hammer took a deep breath and asked the butler to take the glass bottle to verify. Soon, the butler came back and whispered in his ear. Sir, it's true again, but the patient said that the taste of this medicine is too spicy, and it is suggested to put a little less chili next time. Hammer. Can it be less spicy? I've already eaten it here. Seeing the two happily eating the hot pot flavored panacea, Hammer said with a distressed face. To be precise, these belong to the company's property, and you are occupying the company's property resources without permission. I still have a bowl here. Do you want to come and eat with us? Lu Chuang said enthusiastically. In fact, the effect of the panacea is not only to remove toxins and cure diseases, but also to treat baldness, kidney deficiency, frequent urination and many other problems. I think you need this very much. Hammer's face darkened instantly, and he gritted his teeth and said, I don't have these problems. Then do you want to eat? Let me try it. In the following time, Lu Chuang and Ivan Wonk were arranged to live in a company adjacent to the arms factory, and both of them were assigned to their own laboratories. The success of the hot pot flavored universal medicine made Lu Chuang see the way forward, so he decided to work hard and continue to apply to Hammer Industries for the flavor development project of the universal medicine. Hammer gave Lu Chuang very high authority, so these ingredients were quickly approved, so outside Lu Chuang's laboratory, new ingredients could be seen sent in every day. In this way, Lu Chuang started his life as a wage earner. On weekdays, he basically stays in the laboratory to study dishes, thinking about the future development of different flavors of universal medicine. Simply put, it is thinking about what to eat tomorrow, what to eat the day after tomorrow, because what to eat the day after tomorrow. When he was bored, Lu Chuang went to Ivan Vanki to observe how Ivan Vanki transformed the steel armor. For the sake of the hot pot, Ivan Vanki didn't stop Lu Chuang and let this guy stand by and steal look. It was approaching noon on the 13th day, and Lu Chuang found Ivan Vanki as usual. Recently, I am developing a Lafite-flavored panacea, and I need a mouse to try it. Are you interested? At the moment Ivan Wonk is adjusting the statistics of iron soldiers. The original pile of steel armor produced by Hammer Industries, now after Ivan Vanki's transformation, the steel armor has all become controllable steel soldiers, and the performance has been greatly improved compared to before. Hearing Lu Chuang's words, Ivan Wonk's eyes lit up immediately. As a Russian, his favorite hobby is drinking. Lu Chuang's invitation really moved his heart. Definitely, I like the taste of Lafite. Ivan Wonk decisively agreed. Okay, come to my laboratory when you're done. Half an hour later, Ivan Vanki came to Lu Chuang's laboratory, and saw a table in the center of the laboratory, which was filled with dishes, all of which were top-quality ingredients. And Lu Chuang sat at the table, chomping on his steak. Although his cooking skills are not very strong, high-end ingredients often only need the simplest cooking method. Seeing the arrival of Ivan Wonk, he held a knife and fork to say hello. Here you go, have you eaten? Do you want some? No, I'm not hungry. Ivan Wonk looked at the pile of ingredients on the table with a strange expression. I have seen employees with dirty hands and feet, but this is the first time I have seen such a ruthless employee. I just ate all the ingredients for research like this. After eating the steak, Lu Chuang wiped his mouth with a paper towel, and then handed a bottle of wine to Ivan Wonk. This is my newly developed Lafite-flavored panacea. It's a good thing, and it's cheap for you now. Ivan Vanki happily took the wine bottle. As for the panacea and so on, he chose to ignore it. Lu Chuang clapped his hands. Since the things have been collected, it means that you agree to do me this favor. Hearing this, Ivan Wonk said in amazement, What's the matter? Didn't I tell you? Lu Chuang blinked, and said indifferently, Actually, it's just a small favor. I want you to help me prepare some materials, such as gold and titanium alloys. For you, Xiao Cyan permissions should be easy to do, right? In fact, the permissions they have are different. Lu Chuang is in charge of the research and development of the universal pharmacy, So as long as he applies to Hammer Industries for a project related to the Universal Pharmacy, it will be approved quickly, basically without any formalities, and no one will ask. In the same way, Ivan Vanki is mainly responsible for the work of transforming the steel armor, and all the materials used in the process of transforming the steel armor can be directly approved. You must know that the price of these materials is not low. This is the special authority given to Ivan Vanki by Hammer. Ivan Wonk frowned. What do you want these materials to do? This can't be made into a panacea. In his opinion, Lu Chuang is an expert in pharmacy, but he is not his colleague. It is useless to ask for expensive metal materials such as gold and titanium alloys. Definitely want to sell it. These materials are very valuable. If they are sold, they will definitely make a lot of money. Lu Chuang looked at Ivan Wonk with contempt, thinking that the other party was asking nonsense. Ivan Wonk. Sell it to make money, what a simple and unpretentious reason. Hammer Industry is really bad luck. It has such a wonderful employee who is always thinking of profiting for himself. If this guy is allowed to stay, I am afraid that the entire Hammer Industry will be sold by him. Impossible. I won't do it for you. Ivan Wonk shook his head and refused. He has more important things to accomplish, and he doesn't want to involve himself in such insignificant things. No, you will agree. Lu Chuang said leisurely. As far as I know, there seems to be a big guy hiding in your laboratory. The boss doesn't know about this, right? Ivan Wonk's pupils shrank suddenly and looked at Lu Jian coldly. How do you know? These days, while Ivan Wonk transformed the steel armor into a steel soldier, he actually secretly created a brand new steel armor in his laboratory. After the lesson from last time, Ivan Vanki paid a lot of money this time. Anyway, he didn't need to spend money. Using his authority to obtain a large amount of materials, Ivan Vanki started to build a new steel armor. Ivan Vanki thought that there was concealed enough that even Hammer didn't know the existence of this pair of steel armor, but what Ivan Vanki didn't expect was that Lu Chuang would know about it. Lu Chuang said cheerfully, I saw it by accident. I didn't expect you, a guy with thick eyebrows and big eyes, to be more greedy than me. That pair of steel armor should be worth a lot of money. After hearing these words, Ivan Vanki's face instantly became gloomy. Before he achieves his goal, if his steel armor is exposed ahead of time, it will inevitably affect all his future plans, which is the result he absolutely does not want to see. Thinking of this, Ivan Wonk looked at Lu Chuang with a murderous look. Lu Chuang seemed to have noticed this, and said helplessly, Everyone is a scientist, so speak up if you have something to say, don't hurt your friendship with your hands. Ivan Wonk didn't answer, and walked towards him with his fists clenched. His body covered in tattoos and muscles looked quite shocking. Lu Chuang sighed, and while saying insulting words in his mouth, he turned on the bullet time and cooperated with the super high school level spy to meet him. A few seconds later, Lu Chuang sat on Ivan Wonk's body, and persuaded earnestly. Whip, don't blame me for speaking more bluntly. Listen to my advice. The water in Hammer Industry is very deep, you can't grasp it, but I am not afraid, these materials let me greedy. Ivan Vanki. How can this guy be so good at fighting? Ivan Wonk's forehead was bleeding, and he was pinned to the ground by Lu Chuang, unable to move. Originally, Ivan Wonk thought that he was the kind of scientific research personnel who were more capable of fighting, and that he would definitely have no problem dealing with a few people, but he suffered a big loss from Lu Chuang, and was directly beaten to the ground by the opponent within a few seconds. Fortunately, Lu Chuang didn't know Ivan Wonk's thoughts, otherwise he would definitely complain about the other party's overthinking, and even he didn't dare to say such things. You know, scientific researchers who can really fight can fight tanks with bare hands. Even his little Peter will be a fierce man with a single-handed mechanical arm in the future. Ivan Vanki is ashamed to say that he can fight with his fighting strength. Do you want to stop me? Ivan Wonk said coldly. Lu Chuang shook his index finger. Definitely not. I know you made that steel armor to deal with Tony Stark. Don't forget, Tony Stark is my enemy. As the saying goes, the enemy of an enemy is a friend. How could I stop you from dealing with Tony Stark? Tony Stark, on the contrary, I very much agree with your plan. Hearing the last sentence, Ivan Wonk's expression softened a lot, and he believed it. So, sometimes it is very important to set up this kind of thing. But now Lu Chuang has set a position for his own person, which is a handsome, far-sighted, talented, simple and kind-hearted image. Lu Chuang said that there is no difficulty in acting, he just needs to restrain himself a little. In addition, he is also a villain who has been pigeonholed by Tony Stark, so he has gone to evil ways, and he is in a state of hostility with Tony Stark. Because of this, Ivan Wonk didn't think that Lu Chuang would be stupid enough to help his enemy. Ivan Wonk said in a low voice, "You are right, we are friends, can you get up now?" "No, my chair was blown up by you, and there is no place to sit." Ivan Wonk glanced at the debris of the wooden chair next to him, cursing crazily in Russian. "Obviously you picked up the wooden chair and threw it on my head as soon as you came up. What does it have to do with me?" "Don't worry. You first agree to my request and use your authority to help me prepare some materials. In return, how about I just pretend I don't know anything about you?" Lu Chuang smiled brightly. Ivan Wonk gritted his teeth and said, "Okay, I agree." In fact, he really didn't want to agree, but Lu Chuang had something to do with him, and he couldn't beat him, so he had no choice. Wise choice. Seeing that Ivan Wonk agreed, Lu Chuang nodded in satisfaction, and finally left Ivan Wonk. After Ivan Wonk stood up, he took out a list and handed it to Ivan Wonk. "Here are the materials I want, and I will prepare the above items within a week, and then ship them to me." This list is exactly what you need to make a super battlesuit, but Lu Chuang tweaked it a bit, removing common materials and leaving only those that are rare and hard to buy. Ivan Wonk looked at the list, and his face turned black. He couldn't see the value of these materials. The total value is estimated to be more than 40 million. This guy is too greedy. But due to Lu Chuang's force, Ivan Wonk could only nod to show that there was no problem. "Very good. Remember to finish it as soon as possible, before the boss participates in the Stark Expo," Lu Chuang emphasized emphatically. As far as he knows, Hammer will participate in the Stark Expo a week later, and the other party will bring all the steel soldiers to exhibit there, so as to reach a deeper cooperation with the Ministry of Defense and try to push Hammer industry to a higher level. It's a pity that his idea is doomed to fail, because Ivan Vanki has planned everything long ago. When the Iron Soldiers are exhibited at the Stark Expo, Ivan Vanki will directly control all the Iron Soldiers and attack Tony Stark, and Hammer will also, so he was sent to prison. Lu Chuang wanted to collect all the materials he needed before this event came. Ivan Wonk's work was very effective. One day before Hammer participated in the Stark Expo, he had prepared all the materials and sent them to Lu Chuang's laboratory according to the agreement. Without anyone noticing, Lu Chuang took advantage of his talent as a high school level thief to drive away a Hammer industrial truck without anyone knowing it, and then moved all the materials into the truck. However, Lu Chuang did not drive away directly, but continued to stay in Hammer industry until the day when Hammer participated in the Stark Expo. In the evening, Lu Chuang went to Ivan Vanki's laboratory. As soon as he walked to the door, Lu Chuang saw Hammer coming out of Ivan Wonk's laboratory, and his face seemed not very good. Lu Chuang stepped forward and said hello. "Hey, Mr. Hammer. Why are you here today when you are free? Aren't you going to participate in the Stark Expo?" Seeing Lu Chuang's appearance, Hammer subconsciously suppressed the emotions on his face and squeezed out a hypocritical smile. "I have a lot of things to do recently, so I don't have time to come here. How is the development of your panacea?" Lu Chuang said excitedly. "It was very successful, and now I have developed more than 10 different flavors." Hammer. "Good potion research, so many flavors to do. I am not selling drinks." It's true that Hammer hasn't paid attention to Lu Chuang's situation for a while. He learned that Lu Chuang has been developing new flavors during this period, and his smile can't be maintained. But thinking of participating in the Stark Expo later, there is no time wasted here. "I'll talk to you after I finish my participation in the expo." Hammer left a harsh sentence before turning around and leaving. Lu Chuang opened his mouth, originally wanting to remind Hammer that he might not be able to come back after attending the expo, and the only way to meet him in the future would be in prison, but unfortunately the other party walked too fast, and Lu Chuang didn't have time to say anything. Looking at the back of Hammer, who never returned, Lu Chuang thought to himself, "Sure enough, a man can't easily set a flag." Immediately afterwards, Lu Chuang pushed open the door and walked into the laboratory. As soon as he entered the door, Lu Chuang saw Ivan Wonk calling a blessing. It was 2 security guards guarding him. Although Ivan Wonk's combat power is not as good as Lu Chuang's, it is more than enough to deal with the 2 security guards, and his attack is extremely cruel, grabbing 2 wires and trying to hang the 2 fainted security guards. Hearing the movement at the door, Ivan Wonk's hands paused, and he looked at Lu Chuang fiercely. "Who is it? Why are you here?" Ivan Wonk saw that it was Lu Chuang, and his tone became calm instantly. After confirming the eyes, it is a person who cannot be beaten. "It's nothing, I'll just come and sneak through the door, so I won't bother you." Lu Chuang looked at the laboratory, but didn't find Ivan Vanki's steel armor, which was probably hidden by the other party. "Do not bother." Seeing Lu Chuang touching the chair intentionally or unintentionally, Ivan Vanki decided to follow his heart. Lu Chuang sat on the chair, waved his hands and said, "Go ahead, just pretend that I don't exist." Seeing that Lu Chuang didn't intend to disturb him, Ivan Wonk hesitated for a while, and finally decided to proceed according to the plan. First, he called Tony Stark to declare war, luring him to the Stark Expo, and then came to the most important part of his plan. Following a few code commands, Ivan Wonk immediately manipulated all the steel soldiers to attack Tony Stark. Definitely, Colonel Ross's war machine is indispensable. Just some time ago, Hammer approached Ivan Vanki with Tony Stark's same steel helmet armor, and asked him to carry out weapon transformation on this pair of steel armor. Naturally, Ivan Vanki would not let go of such a good opportunity, and implanted his control program into the war machine. Ivan Wonk watched the changes on the screen, tapped the keyboard frantically, and turned into a keyboard warrior, outputting forcefully to Tony Stark through the screen. It's a pity that even the steel soldiers transformed by him can't get rid of the debuff produced by Hammer Industries. Dozens of steel soldiers have all become cannon fodder, and they can't hurt Tony Stark at all. Woo 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 woo. At this moment, an alarm sounded suddenly in the room, and the screen in front of Ivan Vanki displayed a red warning of intrusion by outsiders. On the monitoring screen in the upper right corner, a figure full of curves appeared, and he eliminated the patrolling security personnel all the way, and it seemed that he was heading towards this position. Lu Chuang, who was peeking from the side, directly recognized this figure. Isn't this the Natasha Romanoff he met before? Through the monitoring screen, Ivan Wonk saw Natasha Romanoff's skills, and felt guilty for a while. Obviously, this was another person he couldn't beat. Who is this? Ivan Wonk looked at Natasha Romanoff, who was unstoppable in the surveillance, with a surprised expression. Lu Chuang explained. She is the top agent of Black Widow, S.H.I.E.L.D. What is S.H.I.E.L.D.? A special department that likes to meddle in their own business. This is a difficult explanation, but Lu Chuang said it straight away, and then said casually, "If I'm not wrong, she should have come here for Tony Stark's affairs, and now our boss must have been arrested, otherwise she wouldn't even know you were here." Speaking of this, Lu Chuang's expression suddenly became serious. "Wait, since the boss has been arrested, won't our wages come back?" At first, Ivan Vanki saw Lu Chuang's reaction and thought that the other party had discovered something important, but he almost couldn't hold back when he heard that later, thinking about that little salary. Seeing Lu Chuang's completely unreliable appearance, Ivan Wonk didn't expect him to help him, so he tapped the keyboard quickly, and a document popped up on the screen in an instant, showing the shape of a steel armor. Dazzling. Lu Chuang leaned over curiously and asked, "What are you doing?" "Activate the steel armor, and I will take care of Tony Stark myself," Ivan Wonk said calmly. Following Ivan Wonk's last instruction, the wall of the laboratory suddenly opened, and a pair of steel armor full of wild shapes appeared in front of them. The huge axles of the arms were conspicuous, and an improved version of the electric current whip was hidden there, which was extremely powerful. Ivan Vanki's style. Ivan Wonk seems to have a special obsession with whipping Tony Stark. Ivan Wonk walks towards the steel armor. As long as he puts on the steel armor, all problems will be solved. However, just as he was about to enter the steel armor, he suddenly felt a gust of wind blowing from behind, and he was kicked against the wall. Ivan Wonk turned his head in astonishment and looked at Lu Chuang, who attacked him. "Why, isn't Tony Stark your enemy?" "Sorry, Tony Stark can only be defeated by me." Lu Chuang smiled slightly, raised his fist and hit Ivan Wonk directly. Damn. Ivan Wonk didn't expect that he would be backstabbed by his teammates, and he fell down unwillingly. He was almost able to put on the steel armor, and then Lu Chuang would not pose any threat to him. It's a pity that Lu Chuang didn't give him this chance at all. In fact, according to the original plot, when Ivan Wonk puts on the steel armor, he can easily beat Tony Stark and Colonel Rhodes wearing the war machine by himself, which is ridiculously strong. However, the reason for Ivan Vanki's failure is also very outrageous. I don't know whether it is the protagonist's halo or Ivan Vanki's love for waves. Ivan Vanki ended up being killed because he didn't wear a helmet. Energy explosion. So, there is no one who does not wear a helmet in a mobile armor. Lu Chuang doesn't know whether his own existence will cause the butterfly effect. If Ivan Vanki suddenly remembers wearing a helmet, then Tony Stark will most likely be cold. But if Tony Stark dies, not to mention other impacts, Lu Chuang's achievement task will definitely not be completed, and his efforts during this period will be in vain. Naturally, Lu Chuang couldn't see this kind of thing happening, so he didn't do anything, and directly attacked the old comrade Ivan Vanki. This Tony Stark's rival ended up aggrieved like this. Passing over the unconscious Ivan Vanki, Lu Chuang came to the console, took out a prepared USB flash drive from his pocket, relied on the talent of a super high school level spy, and quickly found the file location of the steel armor, and then put all the information all transferred to his hard drive. Done. Seeing that the words downloaded were displayed on the screen, Lu Chuang pulled out the USB flash drive in satisfaction. Immediately afterwards, Lu Chuang looked at the steel armor made by Ivan Wonk, his expression a little moved. You know, Ivan Vanki is a top scientist not weaker than Tony Stark, and the steel armor he built with his own hands definitely surpasses the Mark I that Tony Stark built from scraps in the cave in terms of technology. It has reference value. In line with the principle that thieves never leave empty space, Lu Chuang really wanted to take this pair of steel armor away, but the problem was that it was difficult for him to remove such a huge steel armor by himself. If only someone would come and help him move out together. Boom. At this moment, the door of the laboratory was kicked open suddenly. A nimble figure broke in, holding a gun towards the interior of the laboratory, glanced at Lu Chuang and the unconscious Ivan Wonk, and then pointed the gun at Lu Chuang, who was still standing there. Researcher, tell me what happened here. Since Lu Chuang is working in Hammer Industries these days, he usually wears the uniform white coat of a scientific researcher. Natasha Romanoff saw Lu Chuang's attire and mistakenly thought he was an ordinary scientific researcher of Hammer Industry. As for Ivan Vanki, who was unconscious on the ground, Natasha Romanoff has already recognized the other party's identity, and it is the man behind the scenes who controlled the Steel Soldiers to attack Tony Stark and caused massive chaos at the Stark Expo. Lu Chuang inadvertently put away the USB flash drive, raised his hands obediently and said, "This Russian fell down and passed out by himself, it has nothing to do with me." Natasha Romanoff approached and glanced down at Ivan Vanki, only to find an obvious footprint on the other's back. Obviously, this footprint cannot be printed by Ivan Vanki himself. Has a problem. Natasha Romanoff's pupils contracted suddenly, realizing something was wrong and she was about to act. However, Lu Chuang in front of him suddenly rioted, raised his hand to hold the barrel of the gun and pressed down hard. Boom. The bullet hit the ground directly. The pistol was controlled. Natasha Romanoff made a decisive decision, and the other hand grabbed Lu Chuang's arm holding the gun. In an instant, Natasha Romanoff used this arm as a support point, and jumped up lightly. The two long legs clamped Lu Chuang's neck, and her waist twisted forcefully according to the inertia, trying to use Newton's law to throw Lu Chuang to the ground. As a result, Lu Chuang stood upright on the spot, and Natasha Romanoff failed to turn around in the first attempt. Natasha Romanoff didn't give up. She swung her body vertically in midair, and with greater inertia, she was bound to throw Lu Chuang over. But Lu Chuang still stood up, his legs firmly planted in place. Lu Chuang looked at Natasha Romanoff, who was clamping his neck and kept shaking from side to side like a pendulum clock. Two tight hunks of flesh were shaking in front of his eyes, and he said angrily, "Damn it, it's a beauty trap." Almost it didn't stop. "Natasha Romanoff. Where are you looking, you bastard?"